Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm out today in the garden just checking the progress of my transplants, and everything seems to be looking pretty good right now. Now these are my cabbage collards, all except for those two right there. Those are cauliflowers. Today is October the 24th. It's about 53 degrees out right now. It's pretty early, but everything seems to be looking good. Now over here we have the carrots that I planted and a late blooming bell pepper plant. And here are my cabbage transplants here. Now I'll be harvesting collard green leaves today, so I figured I'll just come out and make a video and show you all how I like to grow mine in raised beds, and I'll also show you how I like to grow them in containers. When growing in raised beds, I like to use compost. All of my raised beds here are full of composted horse manure mixed with perlite, peat moss, and compost from my yard. I also have lots of earthworms in these raised beds, which supply the bed with worm castings. Now, everyone doesn't have access to horse manure. You can go to your local garden center or plant nursery and grab some cow manure in a bag like this here. It's going to do the same exact job. Now, collard green plants like well-drained, moist soil. So I added the peat moss to help retain moisture, while the perlite helps drainage and adds air pockets to the soil so that oxygen can flow to the roots. Now, when planting collards, you don't want to plant them with anything other than brassicas. They are very heavy feeders. I usually let the first 3 inches of soil dry out before I water my collards. And you can check that by simply taking your finger and sticking it down into the soil. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. All you have to do is move your mulch to the side, like this. You take your finger and put it down into the soil. If it's dry, give it some water. You could also add blood meal to your mix to give it an extra boost of nitrogen. But you don't need it until later on, because the cow manure and compost should be enough for the first 6 months of growth. Now, most varieties require 2 feet of spacing in between each plant, but I like to space mine 18 inches apart like I have them here. Since I'll be out every 2 weeks harvesting leaves, these will never grow until they're full size. Now that you know how to grow them in raised beds, let's talk a little bit about growing them in containers. Okay, so the first thing you need when growing collards in containers is your actual container. Here we have the Dollar Tree bucket. We're gonna put a few in here. We're also gonna put one in the 5-gallon bucket and one more in the pot that I just had lying around the yard. Now, when growing kale and collard greens, you need a fertilizer that's high in nitrogen content, because that's what's going to promote the leafy growth. So what I like to add is blood meal, and that's pretty much all you're going to need to fertilize this for the next year. Now, the potting mix that I have has an NPK of 743, so it's higher in nitrogen content. Now, what I'm going to do is mix this together, the cow manure and the potting mix, and I'm going to put a little blood meal in it. Okay, now that I have it all mixed up, I'm ready to transplant my collards. But before I do that, I'm going to add just a little blood meal to each container. Not much. That's enough right there. And what I'll do is I'll mix that into that top layer there, and then I'll fill it almost to the top and transplant the new collard into the container. Let's mix it in just like that. Now that I have my blood meal added, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little more soil. I'm not gonna be filling these all the way up because I'm also gonna be adding mulch. Okay, now I have my pots ready for the transplant. Now, if you've never dealt with transplants, what you want to do is take your finger and push right here. Just push them up from the bottom. Now that you've done that, you want to take your hand and kind of wiggle your fingers in there. Don't press down and break it. Just turn it over like this, and it should come right out. Now these 4 are my collards. Those other 2 are the last 2 broccoli transplants that I have, and I'll be planting those also. Now that I have these fertilized, transplanted, and mulch, I want to go ahead and sit these somewhere in the yard where they will receive at least 4 to 5 hours of sunlight each day. Now these are frost tolerant, and they will thrive with temperatures as low as 40 degrees. So you don't have to worry about your frost damaging your collard green plants. Now as far as watering goes, you want to keep the soil moist, but you don't want it soggy. And when you're growing them in containers, you could simply just pick that container up, and you will tell the difference from the empty container and the one that has water in it. Now all of these same rules apply to kale, and all of these same rules apply to growing them in raised beds. The only difference is I would be spacing them at least 18 inches apart, but you can also grow these bunched up. Now, if you're going to be growing them bunched up, you want at least 10 inches of space in between each plant. And if you look at the front row here, that's about 10 inches right in here. Now, some people like to grow them that way because they can harvest them more often in one large container versus you letting the plant grow to its full potential and harvesting the whole plant. The leaves will be smaller, but they'll also be sweeter after the frost and more tender than the huge leaves once the plant fully matures. Now let's talk a little bit about how to harvest your plant. Well, how to harvest your collard green leaves without damaging your plant. Okay, so you've waited 50 to 80 days. Now it's time to harvest your collard green plant. Now these here have been here for about maybe 40 days now, and I'm not going to bother them until they get a little bigger. But these over here, I'll be harvesting. And a lot of people make this harder than what it really is. And the truth is, you don't have to wait 50 to 80 days to harvest those leaves. You can harvest them this small, or you can harvest them this big. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. Some people overthink sometimes and they damage the plant by using these. You don't need pruners for collard leaves. All you need is your hand. I'm going to zoom in here and show you exactly what I mean. All you want to do is take your hand right here like this and just pop that leaf off like that. That's it. You just want to pop all of the big ones off. And they come off easy. It's not rocket science. But everyone makes mistakes. Now that's all I'll take off of here. As far as the damaged leaves, I'm probably gonna ball these up and put them under the mulch. And the worms in the soil will come up and eat them. And here's the end result. I left these smaller leaves here so they can get just a little bigger before I harvest. And by the time they get big, I'll probably have 2 or 3 sets come out of here. Now, I'm going to do the same thing over here. And it's simple. All you have to do is grab it and pop it off. Now this one here is a little tough. Just give it a little pull. Don't go snatching at the plant and break the head. Because if you do, you probably won't have any more big leaves. And in the next clip, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. Okay, so I'm at my mom's house right now, and this is her elevated raised bed. And this is where she keeps her greens. Now this is also a good option for those that don't have a lot of yard space. I have collard greens here, a little parsley, and spearmint that I'm going to be taking out of here today because it has taken over the bed. I mean, it's everywhere. It's even come up back there by the fresh plant that I put in a few weeks ago. But this is just to show you what happens if you cut your plant wrong. It won't kill it, but the leaves will never get the size of these leaves or these here. They may get about this big and that's it. So anytime you harvest your collards, you want to simply pop it right here. Just pull it off. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up and probably pull that one out and replace it with a fresh plant. And I'll cut you guys back on. Okay, here's the finished product. I have all the weeds pulled, the spearmint removed, and I have it mulched and fertilized. I put one back there where the spearmint was, and one over here that had the head cut off. But we're gonna leave that one in and see how it turns out. And here's the harvest. Now that white dusty look is just 7 dust. It's not powdery mildew. We had a bug problem a few weeks ago and that cleared it up. And that's pretty much it when it comes to harvesting your greens. Remember, pull here, never cut here or pull here. And always plan your garden with your health in mind.